We have some pretty interesting reporting from The Guardian about what Ghislaine Maxwell actually told Deputy Attorney General Todd Blanche during her 2 days of questioning last month. According to The Guardian, if anyone bothered to read the transcripts, which were made public, Ghislaine Maxwell actually implicated members of Trump's current cabinet. No one specific, but she told Blanche that some members of Trump's current cabinet had ties, serious relationships with Jeffrey Epstein. More on this later on in the show, but according to The Guardian, Blanche, if you look at the transcripts, he hears her say this and then immediately breezes past it with zero follow-up. It's very reminiscent of how Trump's other attorney, remember Attorney General Bill Barr, it's reminiscent of how he handled the Mueller report when it first came out. The Mueller report said one thing, but Bill Barr released his synopsis of the Mueller report first before anyone could read it. Barr said the Mueller report completely cleared Trump. But then the Mueller report came out, and in it, Mueller writes that Vladimir Putin interfered in the 2016 presidential election in order to help Trump win because Putin thought he could get more from Trump than he could from Hillary Clinton. The second part of the Mueller report was a blueprint for prosecuting Donald Trump for obstruction of justice, like firing James Comey. Mueller, in the report, said the Office of Legal Counsel's directive is we can't prosecute sitting presidents. But, Mueller said, here is how you could prosecute Trump for obstruction of justice. And then he outlines all the crimes Donald Trump committed. But Bill Barr tried to control the narrative of the Mueller report by telling us first what was in it before we got to actually read it. And for those willing to believe Trump, the Barr version of the Mueller report stuck more than the actual Mueller report. And it's now starting to look, perhaps, it's starting to look like Todd Blanche might have done the same thing with the transcripts from his 2 days of questioning Ghislaine Maxwell. The Guardian reporting that if you read the transcripts, Trump doesn't come across as innocent, nor do some members of the current cabinet who also don't come across as innocent as the narrative Todd Blanche is trying to advance. More about this later on today's show. Also on today's show, New York City Congressman, Democrat Jerry Nadler says he's retiring from politics after 30 years. Nadler, 78, saying that watching Biden last year trying to hold on taught him that it was time for a generational change within the Democratic Party. Donald Trump announces he's awarding the Presidential Medal of Freedom to Rudy Giuliani after the former mayor of New York survives a near-fatal car crash on Saturday. You know, I bet he'd rather get the $4 million you owe him for all the legal work he did. I don't think he can cash the Presidential Medal of Freedom. E. Jean Carroll saying her new documentary about Donald Trump will finish him off once and for all. And on my last show, I told you about plans for the Gaza Riviera coming to fruition. Some of you didn't believe me. Well, the plans have now been leaked to the Washington Post. The Trump White House is all in on the ethnic cleansing of Gaza. Much more on that later in the show. And reports of a police riot inside the notorious alligator Alcatraz as guards broke into cages with batons and began swinging indiscriminately. This as a judge ordered the concentration camp. That's what alligator Alcatraz is. It's a concentration camp. A judge has ordered it to be shut down and cleared out. More on that later on in the show. Happy Labor Day to all my listeners here in the United States. After Melania reminded our president that you can't wear white after Labor Day, Donald decided to stop washing his underwear. Yes. Now, I checked with a couple of people I figured somebody must have written that joke. No, I wrote that joke. I'm so proud of myself. After Melania reminded our president that you can't wear white after Labor Day, Donald decided to stop washing his underwear. My proudest moment as the host of the David Feldman Show. Okay, it is Labor Day. I know a lot of you hate me for that, but I'm very proud of that joke. You would think somebody would have written it already. No, just me. Stephen Prager of Common Dreams reporting 1,000 Workers Over Billionaires demonstrations were held on Monday throughout the nation. The marches were organized by a coalition of pro-labor organizations, including Public Citizen, as well as the AFL-CIO and the American Federation of Teachers. Common Dreams says the marches were also organized by the National Union of Healthcare Workers, Americans for Tax Fairness, Indivisible, and Our Revolution. Common Dreams reporting a new Gallup poll out last Thursday indicating support for unions is now the highest it's been since the early 1960s, with close to 70% of Americans saying they see unions as a positive force in America. Thankfully, most of those who were polled are unfamiliar with Sean O'Brien of the Teamsters, seen here speaking at last year's Republican National Convention, and right before he decided not to endorse Kamala Harris. He's a turd, and yet, thankfully, 70% of Americans still support unions. So, despite unions more popular than ever, Common Dreams reporting the Trump administration this year took collective bargaining rights from 1 million federal workers, a move now described as the single largest union-busting effort in American history. Donald Trump, and I think that's a pretty good photograph of him, Donald Trump this year became the biggest union buster in American history. Forget Andrew Carnegie, Jeff Bezos. Donald Trump is now the most anti-union figure in American history. Common Dreams also reporting Trump is proposing that nearly 3.7 million child care workers no longer qualify for the minimum wage, which currently sits at $7.25 an hour. It hasn't been raised since 2009, so there is effectively no federal minimum wage. It has effectively been eliminated by the combined forces of inflation and inertia, but now the Trump administration is planning to remove minimum wage protections for the people who protect our nation's most precious cargo, children. Senator Bernie Sanders calling on Secretary of Health and Human Services Chief Bobby Kennedy Jr. to resign. Sanders, in an opinion piece for Sunday's New York Times, saying Kennedy is making Americans less healthy by furthering the dangerously lethal anti-vaccine policies coming out of the White House. These are the very same policies that Bobby Kennedy Jr. promised under oath to avoid during his confirmation hearings. Bernie accused Kennedy of using his new position inside the Trump administration to advance the lie that vaccines cause autism, despite overwhelming scientific evidence to the contrary. Sanders also warning that Kennedy is defunding scientific research and leaving America little prepared for the next pandemic, while at the same time making it increasingly difficult for Americans to get COVID shots, as our nation's now crumbling CDC reports COVID cases are once again spiking. The House of Representatives returns from their summer break, a holiday that ended up longer than usual after Speaker Mike Johnson called an early recess to dodge a vote on releasing the Epstein files. You might remember in a rare moment of candor, Mike Johnson admitted back in late July that he was closing down the House in order to give the Trump Justice Department, as well as Donald Trump, quote, more time and space to figure out what they wanted to do about the Epstein files. This after members of Johnson's own caucus were demanding to see what's in them. I'm going on anecdotal evidence here based on the heckling and screaming that's been taking place in practically every town hall held by Republican lawmakers during the summer break. It feels like the anger has not been over the Epstein files. It feels like the rage directed at Republican lawmakers during these cantankerous town halls feels like the anger is over cuts to Medicaid, cuts to food stamps, the deportations, ICE, and Gaza. Leave a comment and tell me what you think. I have yet to see polling on this where voters are asked to rank their biggest concerns. I'm guessing we'll see some polling on this later this week. Leave a comment, because based on what I've seen, and again, I'm not working off numbers, it seems to me voters couldn't care less about who or what's in the Epstein files. They're in a rage over one big, beautiful bill's cuts to food stamps and Medicaid, along with the tax cuts for the rich. They're angry about inflation, tariffs, and the economy. I don't hear them screaming for the Epstein files to be released. I don't think it's their primary concern. By the way, this is, I'm going to talk about Epstein in a second. This is a picture of Trump. CNN released it. This is a picture of Trump, Eric Trump, and right next to Jeffrey Epstein is a barely 10-year-old Ivanka. Anyway, I think Americans want to see what's in the Epstein files for the same reasons we read the National Enquirer or slow down to look at a car wreck, especially if Rudy Giuliani is in it. Because whoever and whatever is in the Epstein files will simply reconfirm what we already know about powerful men on both sides of the political aisle. And those are the key words here, both sides. No matter what is revealed, we will be knee-deep in both sides. Trump did this, Clinton did that. Meanwhile, the planet burns. Again, I don't know what the polling is, but I do know the Democratic leadership has looked at their polling and concluded the best they could do right now is hammer Trump on Jeffrey Epstein, because that's the only winning message for them heading into the 2026 midterms that won't offend their wealthy donors. Chuck Schumer and Hakeem Jeffries have decided Epstein is a winning message because it's the only winning message they can offer without alienating establishment Democrats who only want to get rid of Trump. That's the only change they want to make. But the real winning message for Democrats is Medicare for all, taxing billionaires out of existence, defunding Israel's military until the killing in Gaza stops, raising the minimum wage, student loan forgiveness, free tuition at all public universities, universal child care, and a Green New Deal. That's the real winning message, but the donors don't want that. So they want Epstein because that doesn't cost them anything. Hakeem Jeffries and Chuck Schumer are beholden to Wall Street. So heading into yet another most important election of our lifetime, the only message the Democratic leadership can dust off is vote for us because the Republicans have more kitty fiddlers than we do, which is true. I don't want to hear, however, the head of the House Oversight Committee, Jim Comer, saying how we need to get to the bottom of the Epstein story because no one is above the law. Yes, they are, and we all know they are. The cops are above the law, most government officials are above the law, and of course, the very rich are above the law. So yes, I do want to see the Epstein files, but it is the classic definition of a political distraction. It's prurient, salacious, and I suspect impossible to prosecute by now. More importantly, this is not about the victims. It's only about the politics of personal destruction, which I'm a strong believer of. I believe in destroying bad people based on their personal life, whatever it takes. because I believe character counts. But if Democrats think they're going to peel off Republican voters next year because of Jeffrey Epstein, then they're not taking back the House of Representatives. And quite frankly, except for the fact that Donald Trump is a Nazi, and the only thing that can stop him is a Democratic majority in the House or Senate, except for that, Democrats really don't deserve to take back the House. They are a disgrace. Yes, standing up to Trump right now is the most important thing they need to do, and they are standing up to him. And I do think they're doing a good job standing up to Trump. But voters and the American people need more than just standing up to Trump. We know, going all the way back to ancient Rome, that unless the Senate, unless the ruling class improves the lives of the citizens will succumb to the charms of bread and circus. Trump, in lieu of an economy that works for everybody, is giving the American people gladiator games. There's literally going to be a UFC fight at the White House next year to celebrate our nation's 250th birthday. That's how republics fizzle. If you don't take care of the people, voters will salivate over any leader willing to satisfy their blood lust. ICE isn't about border security. It's bread and circus. It's giving the American people violence instead of a livable wage. Meanwhile, House Democrat Ro Khanna of California saying he and House Republican Thomas Massie of Kentucky have scheduled what they call a blockbuster press conference for Wednesday where, surrounded by Epstein's victims, they will call for the release of the Epstein files. Ro Khanna telling NBC News he and Republican Thomas Massie will have more than enough signatures for their discharge petition, which would force a vote in the House of Representatives on whether to call on the Justice Department to release all of the Epstein files. Speaker Mike Johnson has been planning to tie up that vote, the vote on the Epstein files, by letting the bill languish in the Rules Committee, which he won't be able to do if enough signatures are on that discharge petition. A discharge petition is a parliamentary procedure which circumvents the House leadership and brings a resolution to the floor for a vote without Mike Johnson's approval, but you need an absolute majority of House members to sign the petition first. So what are the numbers? 435 members of the House of Representatives right now. Khanna and Massie need 218 signatures on that discharge petition. Ro Khanna saying he can get every Democrat to sign it, but needs 6 Republicans. There are reports that as many as 12 Republicans in the House have promised to sign on, which is 6 more than they need. So look, this is all about the midterms, and while I believe the Democrats must offer voters more than just the Epstein files or standing up to Trump, this is politically a smart move because you win back the House of Representatives district by district, and forcing the vote on the Epstein files does give Democratic challengers ammunition against Republican incumbents who are going to refuse to sign on to this petition. But let's not pretend this is anything other than politics. That's all this is, and it's not going to improve the lives of voters. But with the midterms a little more than a year away, it's a smart move to box House Republicans in if and only if Hakeem Jeffries also unveils a string of bills that will improve the lives of voters. If you're introducing bills to release the Epstein files, Hakeem, then you should also start introducing bills that improve the lives of voters. I'm not seeing those bills. Jeffries can't even introduce a bill to raise the minimum wage. Right now, when you're in the wilderness, this is when a party defines itself. This is when you should be writing the Democratic platform by introducing bills that will never get passed. You introduce bills that won't even get voted on, but by introducing these bills, you're signaling to voters who you are and what's in it for Americans if and when Democrats return to power. Chuck Schumer and Hakeem Jeffries have to start introducing signature pieces of legislation that die, that don't get voted on. But in so doing, they expose the Republican Party as the enemy of the poor, the working poor, unions, and the middle class. So, you might remember that Trump's defense lawyer, Todd Blanche, who moonlights as Deputy Attorney General, spent 2 days last month interviewing Epstein's pimp, Jeffrey Epstein's pimp, Ghislaine Maxwell. The transcripts were immediately made public, and there was a lot to go through. I never read them, but The Guardian did and is now reporting that if anyone read the transcripts, and apparently nobody but The Guardian did, because this would be a much bigger story. As I said at the top of the show, Ghislaine Maxwell told Todd Blanche that some current Trump cabinet members had close ties to Jeffrey Epstein. According to The Guardian, our Deputy Attorney General, Todd Blanche, skimmed right past her revelation. The Guardian reporting that if you bother to read the transcripts, and apparently it seems like only The Guardian did, Ghislaine Maxwell told Blanche members of Trump's own cabinet had relationships with Epstein. Blanche pretends she didn't say it, doesn't even ask for names. And it's right there in the transcript. So look, this show, I'm a one-man band. I read as much as I can. There's no way I could find that in the transcripts. The Guardian found it, which begs the question, why didn't all the other news organizations with newsrooms assigned to Epstein find it? Well, earlier I talked about Robert Mueller. Robert Mueller will not testify this week before the House Oversight Committee. The House Oversight Committee is holding hearings looking into how the United States government mishandled the Jeffrey Epstein case. Family members say the 81-year-old former FBI head and special counsel in the Russiagate investigation is unable to appear due to Alzheimer's disease. The House Oversight Committee subpoenaed Mueller, who served as FBI director from 2001 until 2013. They subpoenaed him to explain what he knew about federal prosecutors investigating Jeffrey Epstein's abuse of children, but doing nothing about it. Trump's former labor secretary, Alex Acosta, Harvard Law, class of 94, is scheduled to testify this month before the same committee. Acosta was forced to quit the Trump administration at the height of the Epstein scandal when it was revealed Acosta was the U.S. attorney who negotiated that sweetheart deal for Epstein the first time he got caught raping children. Alan Dershowitz and former Whitewater prosecutor Ken Starr served as Epstein's attorneys at the time, and they negotiated that settlement with U.S. Attorney Acosta, and there was something unseemly about it. I'm not saying they were promising him a job, but it felt like it. The committee has also subpoenaed Hillary and Bill Clinton, along with former attorneys general Eric Holder, Merrick Garland, Alberto Gonzales, Jeff Sessions, and Bill Barr. They are all expected to testify this month behind closed doors, so both sides can then spin their testimony whichever way they see fit. This is the Mop-Up. I'm David Feldman in New York City. Thank you so much for finding me. Please share this episode so I remain in your feed. A lot of you are complaining that you signed up for notifications, but the bell isn't working. I don't know what's happening, but if you might want to re-up on the notifications, subscribe to this channel and my newsletter, and share it. Donald Trump just announced he is awarding the Presidential Medal of Freedom to Rudy Giuliani. This after Rudy Giuliani's top aide says the disbarred attorney and insurrectionist, was critically injured Saturday night with a fractured vertebrae when an automobile smashed into the white Ford Bronco Giuliani had rented. The inveterate racist Rudy Giuliani stopped along New Hampshire's Highway I-93 to assist a woman who the alcoholic Rudy Giuliani claimed had signaled his driver for help, claiming she was the victim of domestic violence. That's a lot of information to take in when you're speeding down a highway. A lot of things aren't making sense. It's very, we're going to find out more. Giuliani, who's being sued in civil court for rape by a former female assistant, claims he stopped to help the woman, then immediately called 911, his lucky number, called 911. And after police arrived, his car was rammed into at full speed. Rudy sustained a fractured thoracic vertebrae, multiple lacerations and contusions, as well as injuries to his left arm and lower leg. All that is according to Giuliani's spokesman, Michael Ragusa. Michael Ragusa is the son of dancer, singer, and boxer Carmine Ragusa, also known as the Big Ragu, who, much to Laverne DeFazio's disdain, was Shirley's on-again, off-again boyfriend going all the way back to high school. That would be Michael Ragusa, son of Carmine Ragusa. Giuliani, 81, who can no longer practice law in Washington, D.C. or New York City because of the role he played in attempting to overthrow the 2020 presidential election, is said to be fully alert and conscious. Really? Rudy Giuliani, fully alert and conscious? I guess the nurses are refusing to administer his daily malt liquor drip. Giuliani remains under indictment for election tampering in both Georgia, you're looking at that mugshot, and in Arizona. He's under indictment in Arizona for election tampering. Here's that mugshot. Well, in all seriousness, I wish this lying, thieving, dirtbag enemy of democracy a full and speedy recovery so his punishment resumes in our nation's courts. Wait, we have new video. Okay, this is new video of Rudy Giuliani inside that undisclosed New Hampshire hospital. And this is actual video of Rudy in the hospital. He appears to be in good spirits, and by being in good spirits, I mean he is now sitting in a bath of bottom shelf monkey shoulder scotch. That's an entire bathtub filled with monkey shoulder scotch, along with Rudy's own effluvia. It's all mixing together, and he appears to be drinking all of it. And wait, we have more new video just coming in. This seems to be footage of Rudy Giuliani's ex-wife, Judith Nathan, coming to visit America's mayor in the hospital. Apparently, she wants to know where his alimony payment is for the month. Nevertheless, the racist former mayor of New York City, Rudy Giuliani, seems happy to see his ex-wife, Judith Nathan. Get better, Rudy. Get better. We wish you a speedy recovery. Well, speaking of insurrectionists that the world would be better off without, in Brazil, the trial of former President Jair Bolsonaro, who many describe as Trump of the tropics, that trial wrapped up earlier last month, and it now enters the final phase before Brazil's Supreme Court, where a verdict and possible sentencing could be handed down in the next 2 weeks. Bolsonaro, currently under house arrest, is charged with attempting to stage a coup immediately after his 2022 re-election defeat. That explains why Donald Trump is such a fan. The Associated Press reporting prosecutors accused Bolsonaro of not just attempting to seize power after losing, but also planning to kill the current president, Lula, who defeated Bolsonaro. The plan also included killing a Supreme Court justice. Bolsonaro is already barred from running for office until 2030. If found guilty, he could face as many as 30 years in prison. Immediately after his re-election defeat and subsequent attempted insurrection, where supporters stormed into the Capitol, Bolsonaro flew to Florida and met privately with Donald Trump, who was no longer president. They met at Mar-a-Lago, and then Bolsonaro met with Steve Bannon, who has been advising Bolsonaro off and on for almost a decade. I think Bolsonaro also spoke at CPAC before returning to Brazil to face charges. In July of this year, President Trump imposed 50% tariffs on Brazil, specifically citing the political persecution of Bolsonaro as the reason for the tariffs. Here in the United States, an appeals court ruled Friday that many of Trump's tariffs are illegal, but the judge left the tariffs in place so their fate can ultimately be left to the Supreme Court. Carlos Bolsonaro, son of the former Army captain turned politician turned insurrectionist, Carlos Bolsonaro now saying the trial has taken a serious toll on his father's health. Carlos saying his dad is losing weight due to severe intestinal problems. We don't need to hear this. He's asking for sympathy. He says his dad has severe, life-threatening intestinal problems that include constant vomiting and nonstop hiccuping, all induced, he says, by the stress of the trial. Do we really want to know about Jair Bolsonaro's intestinal tract? Yes, I have. Let me pull this up. I have exclusive audio of Jair Bolsonaro hiccuping. And you might want to bring the kids in to hear this, okay? Here we go. This is an exclusive. I'm very proud of this. This is an exclusive audio that's been given to me, never before heard, of Jair Bolsonaro's deadly case of hiccups. Let's listen. Okay. Hang on, that doesn't. Let me hear more. No. Okay, I apologize. I am so sorry. That is someone hiccuping in Spanish. This is a fugazi. It's phony. It's not Bolsonaro. Listen. That's somebody hiccuping in Spanish. Whoever forged this audio forgot that people in Brazil hiccup in Portuguese, not Spanish. Listen, again, this is someone hiccuping in Spanish. Okay? That is not that how stupid do you think I am? This is somebody hiccuping in Portuguese. It's not Bolsonaro, but you can clearly see the difference. That is a Portuguese hiccup. Right? That is Portuguese. Okay? This is what they're trying to pass off as Bolsonaro, but that is somebody hiccuping in Spanish. It's a fugazi. My apologies. It's a forgery. That is clearly not Jair Bolsonaro hiccuping. All right. They say he's vomiting. Okay. Let's. Do we want? I mean, okay. I'm going to play. Let's see. Yeah, that's not Jair Bolsonaro. That is somebody vomiting in Spanish. This is somebody vomiting in Portuguese. Okay? So I apologize, but you're not going to get one past me. I'm too smart. Okay? Those that's a Spanish speaking hiccup. I think it's Castilian, the dialect. It's not even close to Portuguese. So whoever sent me this audio, you're not going to fool me or my listeners. We're too smart. We all know Brazilians vomit and hiccup in Portuguese. The person, the idiot, the moron who sent this to me thinks me and my listeners are so ethnocentric, we don't know Brazil is a Portuguese vomiting as well as a Portuguese hiccuping nation, not a Spanish vomiting and Spanish hiccuping nation. They vomit and hiccup in Portuguese. They don't hiccup like this. That is Spanish hiccuping. Right. That wasn't worth it. Hey, it's Labor Day. I think I do this show for free, I think. This is the Mop Up. I'm David Feldman. Please share this episode, especially the last part. You can send the kids away now. I just wanted the kids. If you have young kids, I wanted them to hear that one. Despite Donald Trump calling his March airstrikes on Yemen a success, Houthi rebels continue to fire long-range missiles into the Red Sea and deep into Israel. And they're not really rebels. They are running Yemen now. On Saturday, Israel announced it had killed Yemen's Houthi Prime Minister Ahmed al-Raha, as well as his top aides. A spokesman for the Israel Defense Ministry said, quote, the IDF will continue to target all threats against Israeli civilians. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu promising this is just the beginning of Israel's attacks on Houthi leadership. Since October 7th, 2023, Houthis in Yemen have fired at least 100 ballistic missiles and or drone strikes on Israel in solidarity with the Palestinian people. So far, they've killed one Israeli, injuring dozens. Hans Grundberg, the United Nations Special Envoy for Yemen, telling CNN that 11 UN employees are now being held by the Yemeni government after Houthis responded to Israel's attack by storming offices for the World Food Program and the United Nations Children's Agency, also known as UNICEF. Abu Abaida, a longtime Hamas spokesman, has been killed, according to Israel's military. If you're wondering why he and his buddy have covered their faces, it's because before getting killed, they moonlighted as ICE agents. Before his death was confirmed, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu told members of his cabinet, quote, I hope he is no longer with us, but I notice that there is no one on the Hamas side to clarify the matter. Later in the day, Israel Katz, Netanyahu's defense minister, announced Obaida had been killed, saying, quote, Obaida was, quote, sent to meet all the thwarted members of the evil axis from Iran, Gaza, Lebanon, and Yemen at the bottom of hell. Nice. CBS News reporting more than 43 Palestinians were killed since Saturday as Israel expands its reoccupation of Gaza. Gaza health officials say at least 63,000 Palestinians in Gaza, mostly women and children, have been killed since war broke out in October of 2023. But that number is estimated by other health agencies to be much, much higher. Last week, the UN officially declared that famine conditions now exist throughout Gaza. The Washington Post this morning confirming exactly what I reported on my last show. I talked about Wednesday's meeting inside the Oval Office. It was a meeting on post-war Gaza, attended by no Palestinians, but it was attended by Jared Kushner, Steve Witkoff, and former Prime Minister Tony Blair. And the meeting was all about rounding up 2.5 million Palestinians living in Gaza and placing them in southern Gaza inside a ghetto Israelis euphemistically call humanitarian city. according to plans leaked to the Washington Post, I talked about this right after the meeting, but according to the plans that have been leaked to the Washington Post, the United States will take a major stake in Gaza, helping raise several $billions to pay Palestinians to leave Gaza. Now, it will cost several $billions, but it will come out to less than $10,000 per Palestinian to leave. This is unbelievable. By definition, this is ethnic cleansing. It violates all international law. And since the 1990s, the UN has classified ethnic cleansing as genocide. The plans leaked to the Washington Post were exactly what I talked about on the last show. The plan is, after Palestinians have been removed from Gaza, the United States, along with international developers, will come in, build high-rise luxury apartments, hotels, and casinos along the Mediterranean, and create tax-free manufacturing zones inland to incentivize foreign investors and, of course, Jewish settlers reclaiming the land as well. Donald Trump Saturday promised to sign an executive order demanding voter ID for all federal elections. The executive order is unlikely to survive a court challenge. Voter ID disproportionately disadvantages older, disabled, urban, and financially stressed Americans who are more likely not to have a photo ID, more likely not to have a driver's license or a passport. Time magazine reporting that voter ID discriminates against Americans whose religion forbids them from being photographed, as well as discriminating against domestic abuse survivors who don't want to be photographed because they require anonymity to hide from their stalkers. 36 states now demand voter ID before a ballot can be cast. Trump recently signed an executive order banning mail-in ballots, which is also unlikely to withstand a court challenge. The executive order banning mail-in ballots is already getting blowback from Trump's own party. More and more Republicans say that after mail-in ballots became necessary in all 50 states, thanks to COVID back in 2020, more and more voters, especially older Republicans, now say voting in person is an inconvenience. So we'll see. Time magazine also reporting that our Constitution grants zero election monitoring authority to the President of the United States. California Governor Gavin Newsom asking, is Kristi Noem, the head of Homeland Security, really that stupid? Unquote. This after Kristi Noem appeared on Sunday's Face the Nation, claiming Los Angeles wouldn't be standing today had Trump not sent in the Marines and the National Guard earlier this year. Here she is.
I won't speak to the specifics of the operations that are planned in other cities, but I do know that LA wouldn't be standing today if President Trump hadn't taken action. Then that city would have burned down if left to the devices of the mayor and the governor of that state. And so the citizens who live there, the small business owners in downtown LA, they're thankful that President Trump came in with federal law enforcement officers and helped support keeping those streets open, keep their homes and businesses from burning down, and made sure the law and order was restored.
I just want to clarify one thing you said there. You said LA wouldn't be standing if not for these federal deployments?
So many of those homes and businesses that were in downtown LA and in those areas were dealing with riots and violence, and coming in and bringing those federal law enforcement officers in was incredibly important to keeping peace. And so we are grateful that President Trump was willing to send resources and people in order to enforce the law.
Unbelievable. So yes, in answer to your question, Gavin Newsom, yes, she's that stupid, but she's worse than just stupid. She's a liar, and she's incredibly stupid. And because Kristi Noem is such a dumb hick, Kristi Noem took $50,000 from FEMA to pay a stylist who made her look like Albert Einstein so people will treat her with more respect. Let's go big here. She kind of looks, I think the stylist did a pretty good job. She kind of looks like Albert Einstein. I guess I now want to treat her with a little more respect, even though she really is stupid and immoral. But I have to say, whoever Corey Lewandowski paid to do Kristi Noem's hair and makeup, she is a dead ringer for Albert Einstein. This is an actual photograph of Kristi Noem, hair and makeup to look like Albert Einstein. This is an actual photograph. Wait, I'm being told I did this. I did that using Photoshop. I spent an hour. It involves a little painting, a little touch-up, a little cutting and pasting. Took me a little more than an hour. I wonder how long it's going to be until they stop teaching Photoshop at schools. Because I used to think Photoshop wasn't a skill or an art. I used to think Photoshop was cheating, but compared to what artificial intelligence can throw your way in a matter of seconds, when I'm on Photoshop, I feel like Edward Hopper now. So I try to do it first with artificial intelligence, and they couldn't do it right. We're about a week away from them being able to do it. It's got to be reined in. It's got to be reined in. The New York Times reporting Kristi Noem's Homeland Security hasn't kept text messages since April of this year, thereby making it harder to grant freedom of information requests or conduct investigations into the activities of the Gestapo, or ICE. I call it the Gestapo. Under the Federal Records Act, government agencies are legally required to preserve records of all official business, including text messages. So here we see just another example of Kristi Noem and the White House destroying records in flagrant disregard of what the law says. We are in the middle of hurricane season, and Trump is saying out loud that he plans to kill FEMA at the end of this year. Now, presidents lack the constitutional authority to kill an agency. They don't even have the constitutional authority to defund it, but we'll see how this plays out in the courts. It's being called the Katrina Declaration. FEMA employees sending a letter to Congress warning of a potential Katrina-level disaster if Trump and Kristi Noem continue to decimate this agency. More than 180 staffers signing the letter, which raises concerns over FEMA's lack of real leadership, as well as its inability to respond to emergencies. The letter hits Secretary Noem especially hard, criticizing her personally for lacking the qualifications necessary to be in charge of such an important agency. The letter warns that her attempts at reining in spending are hindering life-saving operations, including FEMA's tepid response to the deadly flash floods earlier this summer in Texas. A lot of people died because of Kristi Noem in Texas. FEMA is part of Homeland Security. The current director of FEMA, David Richardson, began work this year with zero background in disaster management, and he was surprised to learn during his first meeting with agency officials that there was such a thing as a hurricane season. After the Katrina Declaration was put out, Trump suspended several of the employees who signed the letter. That response, similar to the Trump administration's reaction to a letter signed by nearly 300 Environmental Protection Agency employees back in early July. 300 EPA employees wrote a letter warning that the EPA had abandoned its mission to protect the planet. Trump suspended nearly half of the people who signed that letter because he's such a champion of the First Amendment and freedom of speech. Meanwhile, thanks to cuts from the Department of Government Efficiency, FEMA has lost about 1/3 of its permanent workforce since Trump took office. Kristi Noem is also using FEMA to crack down on undocumented immigrants during national emergencies. This is absolutely incredible. She just issued an order preventing FEMA or any state agency receiving FEMA funds or any volunteer group receiving FEMA funds from aiding undocumented immigrants during a natural disaster. I mean, FEMA employees and volunteer groups, when responding to a disaster, are also obligated to report any undocumented immigrants they come across to ICE. So if you're working for FEMA, if you're working for a charitable organization that gets FEMA funds, and there's just been a tornado or a flash flood or a hurricane, and an undocumented immigrant comes running for help, you are now obligated to turn them into ICE. This violates international law. Noem has also moved dozens of FEMA employees over to ICE. They've lost 1/3 of their workforce, and she just moved dozens of FEMA employees over to ICE to assist in mass deportations right in the middle of hurricane season. The Washington Post reporting that 2,000 FEMA workers have already been reassigned to work for ICE. Now dozens more have just been ordered to assist in the deportations and stop with the helping over the disaster relief. Unbelievable. Alligator Alcatraz is shutting down, not because of its cruelty to migrants, but because of its cruelty to alligators. I wish I was kidding. It was built in the Everglades by the state of Florida to house migrants before those migrants could be handed over to ICE for deportation. Now, a judge ordering Alligator Alcatraz closed because it's bad for the environment. Not bad for the migrants, not bad for our Constitution, bad for the alligators. It's in the Everglades. U.S. District Judge Kathleen Williams issued a preliminary injunction saying the penal colony, Alligator Alcatraz, was built on sensitive wetlands that are part of a nature preserve designed to protect endangered species. Turns out migrants are not one of them. Think about this. Only in the United States could a judge rule that Alligator Alcatraz has to be shut down because of its cruelty to alligators. The American people, we better hope there isn't a God. We better hope there isn't a God. The judge ordered operations inside this concentration camp where inmates are crammed, 30, 40 to a cage, forced to share 3 open-air toilets that are never cleaned. The judge ordered Alligator Alcatraz to be shut down in the next 60 days. For the environment, not the toilets that are backing up. Even for the guards, the toilets are backing up. Florida officials say the detention facility is likely to be emptied out in a matter of days, despite Florida Governor Ron DeSantis' vow to appeal this judge's ruling. There are reports in The Guardian of bloodshed inside Alligator Alcatraz as state prison guards prepared the inmates for transfer. Some say a mini rebellion among the immigrants broke out as they complained about the living conditions. The Guardian saying that there are reports of guards storming into cages where the inmates are being held. The guards stormed in there with batons swinging, randomly cracking migrants in the skull with blood everywhere. They're emptying out Alligator Alcatraz. Well, at least someone is finally draining the swamp. I have some exclusive video that I'm very proud of. This is where am I? This is exclusive video of some of the ICE alligators who will now have to be reassigned new positions inside Florida state government because they're shutting down Alligator Alcatraz. You're looking at well, actually, this is an ICE agent working at Alligator Alcatraz. That is ICE alligator agent Danny O'Sullivan. He doesn't work for the state of Florida. He is a federal employee. Let's take a look. What else do we have here? There's ICE alligator agent Flynn Quinn. There's ICE alligator agent Kelly Wash O'Brennan. Nice to see female ICE alligator agents. And that one, I believe, is ICE alligator agent Doyle Fitzgerald O'Connor Kennedy O'Neill, who I believe used to be an undercover alligator with the Boston police force. And they now, because Alligator Alcatraz is being shut down, a lot of these alligator ICE agents are coming to New York City for the next raid. So that's good news. So Alligator Alcatraz was a state-run concentration camp, and obviously these alligators work for ICE. They assisted ICE, but they didn't answer to ICE. As you know, the Trump administration is looking towards third countries to permanently deport some of these migrants. Uganda has agreed to take our migrants so long as they're adults with no criminal records. A deal is in place, but so far no migrants have been sent there. Kristi Noem is hoping to send Abrego Garcia to Uganda. Why? Because he's innocent. Because he has a wife and small children who live in Maryland, which means they're never going to see him again once he's sent to Uganda. She better hope God doesn't exist. Uganda is an African country and almost made Trump's no travel ban. Remember the travel ban? Countries with black people or people of color, you can't come to America. And Uganda was almost on that list until Uganda agreed to take some of our migrants. Evangelicals inside Trump's White House, he has a religious protection office inside the White House. They are fans of the nation of Uganda ever since the nation of Uganda passed legislation to kill homosexuals. Look it up. Rwanda has accepted 7 migrants and has agreed to take in a total of 250. How are you going to get legal representation in Rwanda? So far, South Sudan has taken 8 of our migrants. Meanwhile, while we're shipping migrants to Africa, Trump's budget office, under the leadership of Russell Vought, is violating U.S. law and the Constitution by refusing to provide PEPFAR funds appropriated by Congress to these African nations where we're sending the migrants. $6 billion worth of HIV medication has been earmarked by Congress to be sent to several African countries, but Russell Vought says he's only releasing half of it. This is an impeachable offense. This is what got Trump impeached the first time, when he withheld an arms shipment to Ukraine in exchange for dirt on Joe Biden. And guess who was the budget director back then? This POS, Russell Vought. This is withholding PEPFAR funds for Africa. This is an impeachable offense. PEPFAR was created in 2003 and has saved more than 26 million lives. It is the only good thing George W. Bush ever did in his life. The only thing George W. Bush can point to is PEPFAR in 2003. Even Even Jesse Helms, the senator from North Carolina, one of the worst people in the world, Republican Senator Jesse Helms, back in 2002, Jesse Helms voted in favor of PEPFAR, one of the most racist and homophobic senators ever to serve in post-Civil War Washington, D.C., Jesse Helms. He met with Bono in 2002, and after meeting with Bono, Jesse Helms decided that as much as he believed homosexuals and black people deserved to die, he was willing to vote in favor of sending AIDS medicine to Africa. Now, I want you to think about this. Think about Jesse Helms is one of the worst human beings, not just to serve in Washington, D.C., to just ever be alive. And he's still better than Russell Vought, Trump's budget director. And he's still better than Donald Trump. This is incredible. House Democrat Jamie Raskin of Maryland has made an official request for documents that will shed light on border czar Tom Homan's consulting work with the for-profit private prison corporation GEO Group. Homan started to work for GEO Group during the Biden administration, right after leaving ICE, where he worked under both the Trump and the Obama administrations. GEO Group is the single largest for-profit private prison corporation in America and donated more than $1 million to Donald Trump's reelection campaign, while soon-to-be border czar Tom Homan was doing consulting work for GEO Group. Democratic lawmakers say they want to know how much border czar Homan actually earned consulting for GEO Group before joining the Trump administration, because with passage of One Big Beautiful Bill, GEO Group stands to make hundreds of millions of dollars each year off of contracts with ICE. And who awards those contracts? Border czar Tom Homan. Democratic lawmakers also want answers as to what role Tom Homan played in the hiring of one of GEO Group's top executives, David Venturella, who joined the Trump administration this year to work for ICE. Homan saying that on orders from Trump, ICE agents will soon be storming the cities of Boston and Chicago, performing raids over the objections of the city leaders. Boston and Chicago are both sanctuaries for migrants. That means the police, the schools, and all local government employees there are forbidden from cooperating with ICE. You're not allowed to even ask somebody what their immigration status is. But Trump signed an executive order pulling funding from at least 34 sanctuary cities, refusing to assist ICE. A judge has issued a temporary restraining order blocking Trump's order. The Supreme Court, by the way, ruled in June of 1997 in Prince v. United States that the federal government cannot commandeer state or local police and order them to enforce federal laws. The Supreme Court said it was over the Brady bill, doing background checks for people trying to buy guns. And the Supreme Court ruled if the federal government wants to do background checks, they got to do them themselves. Well, it also applies to enforcing immigration law, at least until the Supreme Court gets their hands on this. An appeals court has also upheld a lower court's ban preventing ICE agents from detaining suspected undocumented immigrants based on their appearance or their accent or their nationality or the work they are seeking. For example, ICE agents cannot just arrest somebody hanging out in a Home Depot parking lot looking for work. The court ruled ICE agents cannot cite an individual's race, language, or work site as reasonable suspicion or probable cause for believing that person doesn't have documents. You just can't look at somebody and say they fit the profile of an individual who isn't documented. But border czar Tom Homan says the courts are wrong, and we should all listen to Tom Homan. Homan insisting ICE agents can, in fact, detain anyone based on simply reasonable suspicion. This is incredible. Here he is on Fox News claiming that ICE agents don't require probable cause to detain an immigrant. All they need is reasonable suspicion. What is reasonable suspicion? Let's hear from Tom Homan.
Look, people need to understand, ICE officers and Border Patrol, they don't need probable cause to walk up to somebody, briefly detain them, and question them. They just need the totality of the circumstances, right? They just got through the observation, get articulable facts based on their location, their occupation, their physical appearance, their actions. Like a uniformed border patrol agent walks up to them at for instance, a Home Depot. And they got all these articulable facts, plus the person walks away or runs away. Agents are trained. What they need to detain somebody temporarily and question them. It's not probable cause, it's reasonable suspicion. We're trained on that.
You're not trained on anything. You're not trained on anything. You're trained to ask someone if they have papers and if they look dangerous to crap your pants and then call in the FBI or the DEA. You're not trained on anything. What is wrong? He doesn't speak his tongue. It must have it sounds like his tongue fell asleep while it was up inside Donald Trump's derriere. Well, this homunculus, Tom Homan, needs to hire 10,000 new ICE agents, and to entice recruits, Stephen Miller designed some new ICE masks that allow ICE agents to remain anonymous while at the same time make a statement. See, I like that. These ICE hoods with 2 holes for the eyes. That's great. You can. Nobody knows who you are, but you're still allowed to dress in a way that tells people who you are. Well, I got to wrap it up. Here is exclusive footage of ICE agents actually nutting themselves after realizing they're about to separate a mother from her 6-month-old child. Look at that. They are nutting themselves when they realize they're going to pull a 6-month-old from their child. If you work for ICE, you're worthless scum. I said abolish ICE 5 years ago. I don't know what this is. I don't know what. I have no idea what that is or why I made it. For years, I've been telling you, abolish ICE. I made this. What did I do? I used some artificial intelligence, a photograph, Photoshop, Premiere Pro. I like that. This is how I cope. I think that's beautiful. All right. That's how I cope. Well, you got to abolish ICE, and anybody who works for ICE is a worthless scumbag. If you're a woman, don't date an ICE agent. It's not safe. And if you're a man, don't date an ICE agent like these guys. It's not safe. It's not safe. ICE now has a budget equal to all the other federal law enforcement agencies combined. Why? They have their budget now, thanks to one big beautiful bill. We spend more on ICE than all the other law enforcement agencies combined, including the DEA, the ATF, the FBI, and our own Secret Service, which tries to protect our dear leader. But now, thanks to all the money going to ICE, our Secret Service agents protecting Donald Trump are wearing standard issue World War II gas masks that are powerless against one of Donald Trump's meaty quarter pounder farts. And I have a clip of an actual Secret Service agent standing about a quarter mile away from Donald Trump. This is a Secret Service agent in a state of panic. Okay, now I'm going to play this for you. And the president is standing a quarter mile away. And remember, sound moves slower than light. So you're going to see Donald Trump's fart, and then you're going to hear it. And look at how this Secret Service agent begins suffocating because we can't afford gas masks to protect our Secret Service agents from Donald Trump's farts. Remember, light travels faster than sound, so you're going to see the fart, and then the sound has to travel a quarter of a mile, and then you'll hear the fart. I'm David Feldman, reminding you to stay strong and protect the weak. Hey, it's either this or I don't do a show. This is the price you have to pay for my show. Because if I don't do that, I can't do the other stuff. Because I'm either depressed about what's going on or I'm in a rage. I choose to be in a rage. And the way I work out my rage is with Photoshop, Premiere Pro, artificial intelligence, and it calms me down. I know you don't like this stuff. I get the complaints, but I can't do the other stuff. I just can't do the other stuff unless I do this. And by the way, you can see Donald Trump's farts, as you just said. I'm David Feldman, reminding you to stay strong and protect the weak. Do me a favor. For some reason, some people are having trouble finding this show. I don't know why. I think I think it might have something. I'm exposing how Spanish people have hiccups. All right. Thank you. Don't do it. Okay. If you could share this, not that, but if you could share this episode with your loved ones, with your grandchildren, your great-grandchildren, your nieces, your nephews, your great-grandparents, your grandparents, your whatever, your relatives, that would help because it's hard to find an audience and keep an audience, especially when you're doing crap like this. See, I do this. The other reason I do that is then I have an excuse for my failure. I can go, well, okay, it was because of the gas mask video. That's why people aren't listening to me. That's why, another reason I do it. I need an excuse for why I'm a failure. I like this. That made me happy. Thank you to Bob and Mila in the chat room. Leave a comment. I'm sure a lot of you want to praise my work, my artistic endeavors. I can't wait to read those. Thank you to Bob and Mila for keeping the conversation civil. I will try to do a show, probably not tomorrow, but the next day. Thank you so much for listening.